So it is Sunday, January 25th, 2026. On a very cold morning in Munfordville, Kentucky, which is in south central rural Kentucky. And I'm walking outside in the middle of an ice storm during one of the most significant and potentially disruptive winter weather events that this area has experienced in a decade or more. And that's not just true for Kentucky, but that's true for many states and counties in this part of the country. And I'm not out here to be reckless. Because as beautiful as it looks, with all of the ice accumulation on the trees, it's actually a very dangerous thing, and something that people in this area are very concerned about in terms of public safety and power outages and the ability to access roads for emergency services. And so I'm not out here casually. I'm out here because I'm trying to adhere to a program that I started at the beginning of the year called 75 Hard. And it was developed by an entrepreneur and a coach named Andy Frisella. And one of the requirements is that you do one 45-minute outdoor exercise session. It can be anything. And so for me, I can't see it because it's underneath this winter shell. But I put on a muck pack, which is essentially a weighted vest. And I typically walk for 45 minutes, approximately 3 miles with my dogs. And in this weather, it's just too cold for them. And so I took a short walk this morning and brought them back inside and came back out here by myself. But I'm out here because the program, as Andy builds it, is not intended to be a fitness program or a diet program, though others have adopted it and adapted it as part of their fitness routine. But the real goal of the program is to develop mental toughness. And you can look it up. There's 5 or 6 things that you must commit and adhere to doing every day. And as Andy says, it's a simple program, but it's not easy. It's not complicated, but it's hard to do because committing to it and sticking to it oftentimes runs into realities like this, where the environment can be prohibitive. And so I won't be foolish, but insofar as I'm able to make rational adjustments, I will continue to try and adhere to the program. And so it's January 25th. I've started the program on the first of the year. And so I'm thus far 24 consecutive days into 75. And if I can make it through today, that'll be my 25th. And if for some reason circumstances don't allow me to make it through tomorrow, it doesn't mean that I can't just pick it back up on day 27. The only caveat to that is then I start back at day 1. And in order to complete the program, you have to go through all 75 consecutive days. But I think the important thing for me is that insofar as I'm able to adhere to the commitments, I make an intentional and concerted effort to do so. Because I'm well past halfway through this life. And I can tell you that I am grateful for the life I have, for the people that I've known and loved and have loved me, and everything that they've given me. And hopefully I've given them something back too. But there's a difference between gratitude and fulfillment. And it would not be truthful for me to claim that I feel fulfilled. I'm happy for the new year. I always am. A new day, a new week, a new month, and new years are always things that lift my spirits, because it seems like a marker for time that opens up an opportunity to do things differently. And I think one of the great values that I've gotten from listening to Andy over the past 2 years is that he's very practical, and he condenses or collapses time, not into these long arcs of meaning, but into these daily tasks that develop into daily habits. And that if you could focus on today and then focus on the next day and stack enough of those focused and intentional days, one after the other, that your life will inevitably improve. And I think that insofar as I have felt unfulfilled, I think a lot of that can be attributed to a focus on something much further away or farther removed that I didn't have immediate agency over, and therefore failed to take action towards. And make progress against. And so I think about that, especially right now, because last year, 2025, was a difficult year. It was difficult for me personally, and I know that in speaking to others in my life, it was difficult for a lot of people. And so I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to make progress on another year. But at the same time, one of the things that really stuck with me that Andy said was the way you feel today is the product of actions you took yesterday or a month ago or 6 months ago. So if you feel bad about today, there's not much that you can do to change that other than to accept it, to acknowledge your responsibility and take accountability for creating the conditions that generated that reality and elicited those feelings. But there's absolutely within your power the ability to change how you'll feel about tomorrow. And what that did for me was that it shifted my relationship to time in a very important way. It made me realize that the actions I take right now are not for this moment. They're actually for my future self. And so it resolved that dissonance that I felt where I would want to take action and I would start, but wouldn't feel good immediately. It lowered my time preference, as Safadine Amos would say. which was a term that I hadn't heard until I heard him speak in regards to investing. Basically, the idea goes that those with a high time preference tend to insist on gains in the short term. And so they're unlikely to hold through dips in the stock market or the crypto market. And they're the most likely to sell. And therefore, when the market eventually turns and inevitably rises, they miss out on those gains as well. And so the goal is to establish in yourself a low time preference. And in a very real way, in a way that wasn't abstract, but was connected to my actual experience, Andy put into plain language how to construct a mindset with a low preference for time. And so what I'm trying to do with these daily walks, with an adherence to a program, is to imagine a future state where I feel better about my progress and my life than I do right now. Without demanding that my current state improve or change as a result of one decision. And that's not so much a decision that you make once and then find the motivation or momentum to stick with it. It's something that you have to do consecutively day after day. And that's why Andy's program is designed the way it is. It's intended to force you into a habit over enough time to make it habitual. And I lived in Las Vegas before coming to Kentucky. I moved there right before COVID happened. And so it was a surreal place to be. I love Las Vegas, I still do. And I will always have loyalty and affection for that city because it taught me a lot about people's ability to rebuild, reinvent themselves, and keep moving forward through adversity. people in Las Vegas actually remind me a lot about the people here in Kentucky. Salt of the earth, hardworking, and simple in a way that masks their wisdom. But during the pandemic, Vegas was this surreal place because even during 9/11, the Strip had shut down for only a few hours. So when the pandemic hit and they basically closed the city and closed the Strip for weeks, it was the most incomprehensible thing. And most of all, to those that had lived and maybe even been born in Vegas their whole lives. Something that nobody ever expected to see happen. And I remember I would walk all the time through downtown where I lived. Old Vegas near Fremont Street. Great neighborhood, great working class people. But I would walk with my dog and I would see billboards with quotes. And can't remember the timing. It might have been around the time that the pandemic was still really a factor. It might have been afterwards, but Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, had died. And he died in a fire in his home. And that hit me really hard. I only knew of him the way most people did, as an entrepreneur, as a very wealthy and successful man, as a visionary. But other than that, didn't know much about his life. But I knew anecdotally about his idealism and his iconoclasm and his willingness to challenge norms and live both differently and creatively. And he did a lot for downtown Las Vegas. Owned a lot of properties and had a lot of big ideas, not all of which came to fruition. But to hear that he had died as a relatively young man, and after succumbing to a fire in his own home, really shook me, especially after this long experience of COVID and isolation and everything that people had to contend with, both as a community but also in isolation. It broke my heart that he met his end that way. And so I started seeing billboards in tribute to Tony, and I would walk by them with my dog and just stop and look, and I don't think even think too deeply, just sit with my feelings, for lack of a better term. And one of the billboards displayed a quote that he had, which I found to be so beautiful and liberating. And it said, "No matter your past, your future is spotless." No matter your past, your future is spotless. And I thought of that over and over again. And it's a perfect saying for Las Vegas because so many people find themselves there, either running from something or running towards a dream. And so what makes Vegas special is that there's people in transition, and some take action, some get lucky, some meet with tragedy. But there is this sense of hoping and striving that is unique. And it connected me with what I'd learned from Andy, somebody that I've only known through YouTube videos that I've been consuming for free on his own dime for the better part of 2 years, though I know he and his team have been making it for longer. But that idea that I saw several years ago on a billboard by Tony Hsieh was in a meaningful way operationalized by the structure that Andy had put towards his program and his coaching style and his approach. Now, Andy's a controversial guy. He has strong opinions, but he's a good guy. That much is true, and I'm a beginner at most things. I'm an amateur and rough-hewn with most things, but one of the things I trust myself implicitly is as a judge of character. And Andy is a good person. You may not agree with everything he has to say or the way he says it, but he genuinely cares about human beings. And he strives to be fair. There's other people that can be said about as well, like that are political pundits or social media personalities or talking heads, people like Anna Kasparian. I agree more with Andy's point of view than I do Anna's, but Anna's a good person. She clearly cares about human beings, and she's willing to adjust her beliefs based on what she encounters in the world, which I think is always important for any of us, is to be able to adjust, to evolve, and to change. And so I listen to Andy, and I encourage anybody that's curious to go find him online as well. He has a YouTube page and other social media accounts. And I get my information from a lot of different places. But Andy's been a primary source of information for me for the past 2 years. last I guess you could call it coincidental, but I think that we see what we point our attention to, or we pay attention to what our subconscious or conscious mind is trying to work out or integrate. But I was watching a short clip. I can't remember his name, but he's a young man that goes around and kind of interrupts people that he knows to be wealthy and successful and asks them when they made their first million. His channel and his program or school is called the School of Hard Knocks. I believe that's the name of it. But he interviewed this woman, beautiful, and asked her when she made her first million. And I think she said 22, and she was just in her early to mid 30s when he had interviewed her. But she'd made this app called Sweat, which I'd never heard of. I'm hoping that I got the name of that app right. But at any rate, the important thing that she said that I picked up on was that the best piece of advice she ever got was from somebody that told her, you are under no obligation to be the same person you were yesterday. Which in combination with what I'd seen from Tony and what I'd learned from Andy really hit me at a moment that I needed to hear it. At a moment and at the start of a new year and at the beginning of a simple but hard program, and something that I hope all of us can remember when we're not feeling the best about the choices we made yesterday. You're under no obligation to be the same person.